Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, totally invisible ocean heist that's happening right under our noses. I mean, we're talking about a colossal, highly coordinated operation that's literally rendering international energy sanctions useless. It's kind of crazy, but it's altering global geopolitics while we aren't even looking. Get this number, 10.3 million. Every single day, a staggering 10.3 million barrels of sanctioned oil are moving across the globe through this totally untracked, parallel maritime network. So this isn't just, a trickle slipping through the cracks. It's an absolute flood of energy moving in total secrecy, bypassing all the normal financial oversight we usually rely on. And what's truly mind-blowing is where all this oil is actually going. Exactly 1/3 of this entire shadow trade, we're talking roughly 3.4 million barrels every single day, flows directly into a single country, China. That's a massive, really massive transfer of resources happening entirely outside the traditional regulated global market. Section 1. Meet the Shadow Fleet. Let's uncover exactly what this mysterious network really is and how it forms the absolute backbone of global sanctions evasion. Basically, the Shadow Fleet is made up of what we call ghost ships. These are aging tankers, usually like 15 to 20 years old, that are moving Iranian, Russian, and Venezuelan crude completely off the grid. They're totally uninsured by Western standards, and they use shell companies, constant flag switching, and tracking evasion just to stay hidden. They are literally phantoms out on the open ocean. And look, make no mistake here, this isn't just a handful of rogue captains looking to make a quick buck. No, this highly organized, massive infrastructure is the global system now. Without it, the sanctioned oil wouldn't be flowing at all. Which brings us to the four-step shell game. So how exactly does this evasion work? To understand how they pull off this daily multi-million barrel heist, we've got to look at the precise mechanics. You see, a normal cargo shipment is fully tracked by global satellites, it's heavily insured, and it follows very standard, transparent routes. But the Shadow Fleet playbook? Well, that operates entirely in the dark. It bypasses all standard oversight and relies heavily on evasive tactics to move billions of dollars in crude. It really breaks down into a brilliant four-step shell game. And to make this super complex maritime operation a bit easier to grasp, we're going to compare this whole setup to a classic, highly coordinated bank heist getaway. All right, step 1 is the purchase. An old ship, one that's worth way too little for Western owners to even care about the sanctions risk, is bought up through a shell company. Usually, these are registered in places with pretty minimal oversight, like the UAE or Hong Kong. Think of this as the bank robbers buying a super cheap, untraceable getaway car under a totally fake name. So the real mastermind is never anywhere on the paperwork. Then we've got step 2, which happens right after they load up that sanctioned crude from a designated port. The ship switches off its AIS transponder. That's the global satellite tracking system, essentially just going completely dark. In our bank heist analogy, this is exactly like driving that getaway car away from the scene with the headlights completely turned off, right in the dead of night so nobody can catch or license plate it. Now, step 3 is absolutely the most critical part of the entire operation. This is the mid-ocean transfer. Out in the open water, the crude oil is physically pumped from that dark vessel over to a second, clean ship. This clean ship holds fake paperwork claiming the oil is from somewhere completely different, like Malaysia or Oman. It's exactly like driving into a pitch-black tunnel, switching all the loot into a totally different getaway car where no one can see you, and then driving out the other side looking like a totally innocent commuter. The authorities just lose the trail completely. And finally, we reach step 4. The payout. The payment for this oil happens through China's SIP system using the renminbi currency. This means it completely bypasses the US dollar and the international SWIFT banking network. It basically acts like a private, underground barter system that leaves absolutely no paper trail for the US or Western banks to follow. They just have no jurisdiction over it. So what's the result of all this? It creates a system perfectly captured by our source material. Hydra-like, cut one head, two more appear. Because this whole thing is completely decentralized across hundreds of vessels and dozens of different operators, taking down one single ship or shutting down one shell company barely even dents this massive, continuous flow of oil. Section 3. Hiding in broad daylight. Now, you'd probably think global conflicts and heightened military tensions would easily disrupt a fragile ghost network like this, right? Well, recent events in the Middle East have shown just how stress-tested and incredibly bold this network has actually become. The sheer volume of oil operating under extreme geopolitical pressure is just staggering. During recent Iran war tensions, 16 tankers moved 16 million barrels straight through the highly monitored Strait of Hormuz in a span of just 2 weeks. And currently, there's a massive 165 million barrels just sitting on the water outside the Gulf, waiting. To put that in perspective, that is enough to cover 4 entire months of Chinese imports, just floating out there, totally unbothered. And the crazy part? They aren't even really trying to hide anymore. In a move of sheer audacity, some of these vessels literally broadcast the words China owner on their public tracking systems. They do this specifically to signal a protected status. So they are literally hiding in broad daylight, and incredibly, it works. They are selectively allowed to pass right through major conflict zones completely unharmed. Next up, a ticking environmental time bomb. Because look, this massive heist comes with a devastating potential cost that goes way beyond geopolitics, sanctions, or the energy trade. These ships represent a massive physical risk to the environment. As we established earlier, they're often 15 to 20 plus years old, and they are notoriously poorly maintained because, well, they operate entirely in the shadows. But the absolute most alarming part is that they lack Western protection and indemnity insurance. So if one of these aging vessels has a catastrophic oil spill near a coastline somewhere, there is absolutely no insurer standing by to foot that multi-billion-dollar cleanup bill. That leaves local taxpayers stuck paying for a shadow fleet's disaster. The final section, why Western sanctions fail. So where does all of this leave the global sanctions regime against states like Iran, Russia, and Venezuela? Well, over the last decade, we've seen escalating sanctions against Iran, and then Russia, and then Venezuela. But as we've seen, it hasn't stopped the flow of oil at all. Instead, each new round of sanctions simply forced this parallel infrastructure to adapt, to evolve, and to become the highly sophisticated Hydra-like shadow network we're seeing today. It reveals a pretty uncomfortable truth for Western policymakers. Sanctions without real enforcement are honestly just suggestions. By exploiting shell companies, dark transfers, and alternative financial systems, this phantom fleet turns strict international regulations into mere background noise. And this leaves us with a critical, open question to end on today. Can global authorities ever really catch up to and dismantle this system? Or is the shadow fleet just the permanent new reality of the global energy trade? What do you guys think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and hey, don't forget to subscribe for our next explainer. Thanks so much for learning with me today.